Just a heads up, not to like
That's pretty nice. That's really scary. Pretty scary. I only have one trick. It's not very effective for that. It's not like, but it doesn't like get far. It's just like smile. I feel like every interaction that like any person in our group was like, there was just like guards everywhere. It's like I was like smiling and they would smile back. Like covering everybody. Yeah. I was just smiling. Like it's like big. Like I was like I think there. Because I'm so nice to how I talk to need to even though like you do that out of all things okay. You're being strained right now. Yeah. Alright, we're gonna start in 2 minutes, so grab a seat.
Auto, right? Yep. Auto. Whatever works. Whatever works. Sorry.
So yeah, we just want to do like Node.js, section join Meetup, Node.js FullStack Meetup. You can also say something. Sure. Yeah, that's what I mean. Join Meetup, FullStack Meetup. This is Mike. Mike is the runs the Meetup. So you got to email them, right? No, sweet. All right, it's about that time to get the show on the road. I'd like to thank you guys all for coming out to the Node.js combined meetup with FullStack. So we have an interesting show tonight. Also, we're live streaming this. So right now we're up live on twitch.tv/BrookeZerker. That's my Twitch channel. And we're going to potentially have questions coming from there, but you guys are the live audience at this time. I also like to thank our sponsors for coming out here, which is the Code Talent. They're bringing this space to us, and also the beer. Also, Google, that small search engine company, has brought us the pizza that you guys have all enjoyed. Guys, do you have anything?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'm going to stand over here for the mic. Yeah. So hi, my name is Mike Pack. I'm one of the co-organizers of FullStack Meetup, and I don't really have a ton to say right now, except that if you're not familiar with FullStack, we cover, well, the full stack, and which is really everything across the board, and we always try and mix it up and have a lot of different interesting topics. We're working on, not confirmed yet, we're working on a Postgres meetup for November, so you know, that's in the works. Obviously this is in JavaScript, so it's a little bit different than Postgres, right? So we try and cover a lot of different topics. But other than that, don't have any sponsors to thank today. I think that's really it. Yeah.
Before we begin, is there any announcements, or anybody want to make an announcement? Yeah, the speakers. Well, if I get really close, so I guess if I move this up, how about this? Yeah. Okay, that's a little bit better. Without any further ado, I'll let our guest speakers introduce themselves tonight. They're pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah. How are you guys in tonight? Yeah. Awesome. All right. So today we're going to be learning about serverless Node and also a little bit about Vue.js. So before we get started, how many of you guys work with Node.js? Okay, so a big crowd. How about you? Just a couple. Okay, cool. Yeah, so what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be building a serverless Node application with a framework called Webtask, and then we're going to hook it into a Vue.js front-end client. And a little bit about me. My name is Authentication. And I work as a developer evangelist with a company called Auth0. And what we do is we do authentication as a service. So we can handle your Node.js or any framework really apps, authentication, authorization, security, user profile needs, and anything like that. And as part of my job, I go out to events like this, talk to developers, see what they like about our product, what they don't like, and also try to teach them, you know, some new things, hopefully. And I'll turn it over to Chris to introduce himself.
Yep. Hey everyone, my name is Chris Seveleja. I founded Scotch.io, a web development tutorial site. Hopefully some of you have found us. Right on. Yeah, you're welcome. So that's great to hear. I don't know. I guess Chris on Code on Twitter.
All right. So we'll just get into the talk, and then we'll see how it goes. So why serverless? How many of you guys have heard of serverless computing? Okay, so about 60–70%. So before we get into why you should use serverless or why serverless makes sense, we'll do a quick history lesson on how we got to serverless. And back in the day when we used to build startups and we used to build applications, we would have to go out and buy our own servers or buy servers in a data center somewhere, host them ourselves, get a DevOps team to worry about security patches, worry about updates, making sure our application is running properly. And that was really cost prohibitive for a lot of people like us who just want to build cool apps and hopefully get some traction. So the big players like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they have all of this server space, all of these servers that they're not using all of the time. So they decided, hey, we can offer these for a lower cost. And all of us started to move everything into the cloud. And that's kind of how the whole cloud movement started. And it's only been maybe 7–8 years that it's been really relevant. But nowadays, almost every application, every startup starts out at the cloud. And that's how they do their startup. Again, the big guys realized that even if they offered servers, you still had to have a DevOps team to come in and manage that server. So you don't have to manage the actual hardware, but you still have to go. You still had to go log in, do the updates, install the application, make sure everything's running properly. So they decided, hey, we have all these engineers. Let's offer platform as a service. And a good example of that is like the Google App Engine, where you can basically just give them your code, they'll spin up the servers, they'll manage everything for you, and all you worry about is writing your application code. Now, with DevOps, so you need a lot less DevOps, but at the same time, you're kind of limited by what Google provides. So with the App Engine, like I'm a big fan of Go, and Google supports Go 1.8 or 1.6 on their Google App Engine platform. And if I want to use Go 1.8 that has a lot of cool features, I unfortunately cannot. So I have to go spin up a server, install it myself, and manage it. And I hate DevOps, so not a really favorable option for me. So finally, while we were getting all of these innovations in hosting our applications, software as a service started becoming really bigger and bigger. So rather than us building all of the applications ourselves, building all of functionality ourselves, we could basically outsource our non-core competencies to third-party companies. So for example, like we're Auth0, we do identity really well, but we don't really do messaging too well. So we'll rely on Twilio to send out SMS messages, we'll rely on SendGrid to send out emails, and it just kind of helps us focus on what we do really well and let the experts in those fields kind of do their own thing. And then finally, now the new up-and-coming thing is server as a service, and it has a bunch of different names. You have serverless, you have microservices, you might have heard it referred to as cloud functions, and I'm sure there's functions as a service, and many other names. And they're all confusing. So when you think of serverless, you're probably thinking of, no servers, how does my app get deployed? And when I first told Chris about serverless, he was like, oh, this is kind of like writing a markdown file and just throwing it up on S3. Not quite. So what is serverless? And when we say serverless, what do we mean? Essentially, what we mean is it's someone else's server, someone else's problem. We just want to write the code. And a couple of weeks ago, I was looking on Twitter, kind of just seeing what people were talking about serverless, and this guy Rob, he had a really good definition that I thought was really fitting of serverless. And to him, what he said serverless meant was auto scale and no idle costs. So right now, if you were going to like AWS and deploy like an EC2 service, even if you don't use it, you're still going to be charged at the end of the month, $4 or $5 or whatever the size of it is. With serverless frameworks, and whether that's AWS Lambda, Auth0 Webtask, or any of the other ones, we typically don't charge you to deploy your application because you're writing really small applications that do one thing and one thing really well. So we'll charge you when you actually use that function, when you call the API. And that kind of brings me into the different types of serverless frameworks that are available today. So obviously, Auth0 Webtask is one, which was born at Auth0. We actually used it in our rules engine, basically allowing our customers to augment their identity infrastructure with custom Node.js code. And they found it so intuitive that we're like, okay, let's rip this out of Auth0 and let's just make it available for everyone. And it's totally free to download and start using. There's Google Cloud Functions or Firebase Cloud Functions, which they just renamed last month. AWS Lambda is probably the leader in the field, the biggest provider of serverless functions. And then this last one may be a little bit controversial, and I consider SaaS applications serverless applications because when you sign up for Twilio, for example, and you want to send a text message, you're basically just going to hit their API and say, I want to send a message to Chris. And you don't care how they do it, you don't care when they, well, you care when they do it, but you just want that message delivered on time and everything else is kind of abstracted away for you. So that's kind of what serverless is and what we'll get into in a little bit. I'll hand it over to Chris to introduce Vue and then we'll get to the coding part.
Sure. So from what I saw earlier, pretty much nobody is on Vue, right? Oh, okay. So
I wasn't paying attention.
Handful, okay.
Count using it, or do we count like using it in production?
No, not production. No.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah, so how many of us have used Angular.js version 1? All right, Angular 2, or sorry, V2? Okay, and React. All right. Okay, so this is interesting. Vue is a progressive JS framework, and the way that people kind of look at it is this next slide here, is in the JS library world right now, we have things that do less and things that do more. So on the side of the less is we have normal templating engines and stuff like that, and then we have React, which sits very close to the Vue layer. On the other side of things, we have Angular 2, V2, V5 now, that is seen more as a framework that kind of does more things for you. And where Vue plays is right in the middle, and the reason it's called progressive is because it can do as little as you want. It can go down to the React level, or it can go up to a full-on framework where you build in a build tool and bring in Webpack and that huge shebang for a single-page application. So the way we're going to do it, we're going to stick a little bit closer to the left side of things. We're going to build a Vue app that is more just the Vue side of things. So why use Vue? I kind of touched on it. It's a little bit more lightweight than Angular. And the main kind of feedback I get from React of why you should, I feel like this is far, why you should and shouldn't use React is JSX, right? So if we know HTML, a lot of people are kind of alienated by JSX. Vue gets rid of that alienation. It's very close to Angular.js. You're just writing HTML and then putting some extra syntax on top of it. So that's why you would use Vue. When to use Vue is, I guess that same slide is, you want something that can drop into a current application. Very simple to drop in. You don't need any build tools. You don't need Webpack. You don't need any loaders, transpilers. Vue can work if you just drop in a script tag and you're good. Kind of like how Angular.js was, and that's why a lot of people are moving to it, I think. So let's get into the fun part. We're gonna have a demo. If you want to follow along, I don't know if I see laptops. Okay. All right, that's fine. Now you can't, you can't fact check our code. So I'm going this way.
Yep. For like three.
All right. Okay. So this is going to be our demo app. We're doing GIF battles. This first part is going to be, you can vote on whatever GIF you want. And I don't know if this is even responsive, so don't try it on your phones. You can create a GIF, so we'll have a little refresh button. You can click, get a new GIF from the Giphy API, and I'm sorry if some of these are not appropriate. We have, yeah, stuff, right? So once you start typing, we'll have Vue do the whole two-way data binding thing and that you're used to from Angular.js. We'll have login, so some good old authentication, we'll see that. And then down here we'll have a leaderboard, and we'll see how many votes each one gets. Let's go back over to the slides. So how is this working? We have a serverless Node backend API with Webtask and the front-end client with Vue. And moving forward, there's going to be 3 parts. So this is something that we're trying out. We haven't really done this before. I don't know if you've been to a dueling piano bar where one and the other goes. So we're going to do backend to the front end, and we'll just keep switching off in the middle of the presentation. We'll see how it goes. There's 3 parts. There's the creation. You saw that in the middle of the demo. There's the battling part, and there's the leaderboard part. So we're going to do 3 switches, 6 switches, I guess. And so the creation part, we're going to get a random GIF and create a GIF plus a caption. So to start us off, Otto will take us through the backend side of that.
All right, yeah, and we actually, I'm going to be using Webtask, and I'm going to use Webtask's online editor to actually write and deploy this code. If you were to use Webtask, you could actually write your code locally and then use the Webtask CLI to push your code. But we're just going to do it in the editor. It'll be a little easier. And then also the Webtask editor, I'm going to use a dark theme. So you guys know we're working on the back end, the dark side. And then Chris is going to be working with the light editor on the front end side. So that's going to be our differentiation here. So again, just a little bit more about Webtask. All you really need is code, as I'll show you. I haven't done anything prior, any other setup other than logged into my Webtask account, and I just put a couple of stubs in here so you guys don't see me try to write all of this code manually. But basically, for the creation part, we're going to have 2 different API endpoints. We're going to have one that gets a random GIF from the Giphy API, and again, I apologize if any of the GIFs come out inappropriate. We're going to put a PG-13 filter on there, but we'll see what comes out. And then we're going to have the API that's going to allow a front-end user to view a GIF, add a caption, and then send it to the backend. And then we'll store it in a little database. Now, for the database, rather than set up like a Redis or a Mongo, I'm going to use Webtask's built-in storage, which has about 500 kilobytes of storage per function. So you wouldn't normally do this in like a real-world application, but for our demo, it should be good enough. And with that said, we are going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is implement the random API, which is just going to get us a random Giphy request. So here, I'm just building, how many of you guys have worked with Express before? Okay, so almost everyone. So for all intents and purposes, this is just an Express application running on Webtask. So we're importing Express, importing the body parser so we could get the JSON data that Chris is going to send to us. The request library so we can make HTTP calls. And then this Webtask require just kind of allows us to transform this Express application into something that runs really well on Webtask and doesn't give us any issues. And then here, we're going to be using the body parser. We're going to be expecting JSON data. And then let's implement our first API. So we're just doing request, and our API is actually going to be so good. So this is basically going to call the Giphy RESTful API. We're going to the random endpoint, which is just going to return a random GIF, and we have to pass them our API key. So if you were to do this on like the front end, you would expose your API key, which you shouldn't do. So Webtask is going to allow us to kind of hide that away. And let me just add a filter on here. Say that it's and then what we're going to do here is we're going to get an error. I can. Better? Awesome. So we're going to get an error response and then the body. And Chris told me to use these arrow functions. I'm old school. I like ES5, but he was like, no, do this. It's way cooler. So.
Or yes.
So we're gonna the data we're gonna get back from Giphy is gonna be in a weird format. So we're just gonna parse the JSON out of it, and then to get the GIF information, we're just sending him the GIF ID, which is gonna be in body data ID, and then the URL for the GIF. which is going to be body, data, and then it's image underscore original underscore. Once we have this, we're just going to send them back JSON. So we're going to do response JSON, send them that GIF. I'll save the Webtask. It's going to be automatically rebuilt. And I can copy this little URL at the bottom where my application lives. And just to make sure that it works, I'm just going to access it. And there it is. So you get the ID from Giphy and then a random GIF. Wow, that's an inappropriate GIF. I knew this would happen. So let's refresh and get a different one. There we go. That's much better. So our random API works. We can get a GIF. Let's implement the functionality to. So what Chris is going to do is he's going to build the functionality to pull this GIF and allow a user to add a caption. And then he's going to send it back to our API. And we're just going to consume it here with this post request. And the way this is going to work is we're going to get the GIF in the request body. Then, again, since we're not going to connect like an external data storage, we could do it here, but we're just going to use the built-in Webtask storage. That lives on Webtask context storage. And then we're going to get the data, essentially. It's going to return error and a data, and then we're not going to do any error handling because we are excellent programmers and never make any mistakes. So once we get this data, by default our database is going to be empty. We seeded it a little bit with a couple GIFs so we have something to work with. And I'm just going to do this, a good coding practice. We're going to expect to have an array to push our data into. So if there's no data for any reason, we're going to start with an empty array, and then we're just going to push the GIF that Chris is going to send us onto the stack, and then we're going to save this data back into Webtask. And this is, so this is going to be set. We're going to pass the data array, and then we're going to get an error again, but we don't care about it because we are great programmers. So we're just going to send them a message, no matter what. That's going to say success. I do. This is why I like functions the old way. And so now our API should be working for both the get and post to generate a random GIF and then to create one and store it in the backend. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris and the white editor to implement the front end.
All right, so there's a little bit of boilerplate here, and let's go through it. I'm going to zoom in. It's nothing too crazy. We have our CSS. We have Bulby, which is the closest thing I could get to whatever the GIF official font is, I guess. Bulma, which is kind of my favorite framework right now, CSS framework. Bootstrap's kind of been around for a while. I'll switch it up a little bit. Styles.css is just some random stuff I threw in there. We don't really want to worry about that. We're just loading the script tag for Vue. We're loading the script tag for Axios, which is the HTTP kind of client library that we're going to use. And then here, we're going to talk about this in a little later, but we're going to add in authentication, login, logout pretty easily, thanks to Auth0. And here, let's get started. We're going to have a couple sections, as you saw in the demo. We're going to have the header. And right now, the Vue, the HTML, has 0 Vue.js. Kind of hard to say, Vue and Vue.js. It'll have no Vue.js content yet. So we have our nav bar, we'll hide that. Our GIF creator, which is where we're going to work right now. And our voting app, we'll hide that. And we have our leaderboard, we'll hide that for now. And here is where we'll put all the Vue stuff. And that is not valid JavaScript. So we'll delete all this. And to start us off, is that large enough? Yeah? Okay. So to start us off, the way that Vue works is you have to tell it what you want to mount to, what you have to look at. So we're going to say const app is equal to new Vue, and this is how you create a Vue instance. And we're going to tell it to look at the element of ID of app. And this is the basis of creating a new Vue instance and starting to use Vue. And if we go look where this hashtag app is, at the very top, I kind of wrapped everything in just this div ID app. So that's the starting point. Let's see. Now we're going to see the basic functionality of a Vue instance. We're going to have our element, targeter, target selector, and we're going to have data, and we're going to have methods. And that is essentially a Vue application, right? So to get us started, we have two API endpoints. We're going to do the get a random API call first, and methods will do get random gift, and that's going to be a function. This will use the Axios library.get, and I'm going to put API URL inside of the data thing, and we have to grab that from. And if I'm going too fast ever, just let me know, yell at me. Slow down a little bit. We have our API URL, and that's what we're going to hit. So this down here, we're going to use ES6 template string, this.API URL, random, and Axios library returns a promise. We're going to say then, and we're going to have a response, and then we're going to do something with this response. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a brand new data variable. We're going to call it random gift and set it to null. And the reason you define things in your data object first is because it's good practice for a couple of reasons. One, it's really good to kind of come back to this application maybe 3 weeks down the road and maybe you forgot what was happening. Really easy to see in Vue what's happening just by looking at the data object and your methods object. And two, there's a very important reason in Vue to put it in the data object first, is if it is not in the data object first, it won't be reactive. So if we change it, it won't update in the Vue, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's actually, gotcha. That's what that red squiggle is. Okay. You already start up Light Server? Okay. Nothing. So let's go look over here. We have, you know what? I want to show off that I'm not joking about the reactive thing. We're just going to say random GIF here. And those of you that are familiar with AngularJS, very similar syntax interpolation of getting some data into your view. It'll just inject it right there. We'll go to the view, refresh, random GIF is what, null? Yeah, let's do something with a string. All right, so we have that here. And if we go into inspect, we go into our console. Let's zoom in here. We bound our Vue instance to that app variable. We can say app dot, what do we call it, random GIF is equal to look at Nego. And immediately reactive changes happen. You can see that Vue kind of handles all the changes for you, which is good. So we'll refresh this. We'll come back over. We'll actually use this API call. And we're going to say this.randomGIF is equal to response.data. And I'm just using some ES6 arrow functions to one-line this thing. So we have our random GIF. And if you wanted to one-line further, which we debated on doing, but it's just not readable. So where are we? Random GIF, we're going to say, very similar to AngularJS, we're going to say diff. No, let's use emit. GIF create a container, and we're going to say image. We'll keep that there for now, and then we'll say caption, and here we'll interpolate the caption for the random GIF. And the cool thing about Vue is it's very similar to AngularJS. If you want to say, look, don't show this unless random GIF exists, you can say v if, and that's one of Vue's directives, very similar to AngularJS. Random GIF, like, okay. Now you might be wondering, how do we bind the source to the source? You can't just do, well, I mean, I guess you could just do this, randomgif.caption.url, but the correct way to do it in Vue is to say vbind source equal to randomgif.url. And that will be enough to show off our brand new GIF, hopefully. Nope. Okay. What? Ah. I did that when we did our demo. Okay, so we have this working, but we never actually called it. Makes sense? So we have created is a lifecycle hook that Vue provides. So on created, when this Vue instance is instantiated, it locks onto its element, this dot get random give. Cool. Now, all right, we got it. All right. Hop is different in my world. That should be good. Let's try it out. If we go here, okay, refresh. Let's get a good one. Did you do PG-13 or R?
I did.
That's gonna get good.
Oh, you know what? We can't even use it because I didn't have a save button yet. Live coding on a couple of beers. All right, so we've seen how we get data from the Vue instance out to the template. Let's see how we can get an event out from the template to the JavaScript, the Vue instance. We're going to have an A tag. We're going to say class is equal to button, and is danger is the Bulma way to turn it red. And here we're going to say create GIF. But the other thing that we can do, instead of vbind, which is going from the JavaScript to the template, we're going to go von, and this is just listening to any HTML event name, and this is click that we want to listen to. On click, we're going to save GIF. So pretty easily, we can wire up two ways, come back over, not safe for work, and we'll say create GIF. So that created it. We probably should do a success message or something, but it refreshed everything, and now I think that's it for the first part. So Otto's going to go in the database, show you that we're not fibbing and it actually was created, and we'll start moving into part two.
Sweet. All right, so far so good. So we create a GIF now. We can get a random GIF. So now we're going to go back to the Dart editor, and we are going to implement the functionality to have a user vote on a GIF and to see a GIF battle, which is going to load 2 random GIFs from the database, and then you can vote on one or the other. And just to show you guys, like Chris said, that the data that he sent me is real, I'm going to... Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. Move this guy. And yeah, so this is the last GIF he submitted with the not safe for work caption and then the GIF. So it got stored in the Webtask storage. We can see we still have 499 kilobytes worth of data, and we won't get anywhere near that at the end. And I'll make my screen bigger again so you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is let's implement the versus functionality that's actually going to let us get 2 random GIFs from that list of GIFs and then send them to the client. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to prepare the response, which is just going to be an empty object for now. We're going to go back into our Webtask storage. So storage.get, we're going to get the data. We're getting an error, data, do an arrow function again to please Chris. And once we have the data, we're actually just going to shuffle it. And I wrote this handy function called shuffle array. And it's just going to shuffle that array of data. And I can show you guys at the bottom here what that function looks like. It's just going to loop over the array, get every item, and just going to put it in a random spot so that we can ensure that we're not returning the same GIF twice and that everything works as intended. So once we shuffle it, we're going to prepare this response. And we're just going to say GIF1 is going to be the data 0 because we all know that array start at 0. And GIF2 is going to be from the second place in the array, which is data 1. And then we're just going to send that JSON data over. So we're just going to say response JSON, response, and then I can show you guys that that works here. And it's just called versus. So we get 2 random GIFs. We can look at them and we can see that neither of these have any votes. If we refresh, we'll probably get 2 different ones. And we do. So that's great. So we have the versus endpoint implemented for Chris to consume. And now let's do the vote one. So for this one, this is a post request. And so Chris is going to be sending us some data, which we're going to capture here. Request.body. And then we're going to go back into the Webtask storage, context, storage.get. And we had this discussion last night about the best way to find an element in the array. So what we want to do is Chris is just going to send me a GIF ID of the item that should be voted, upvoted once. And we're like, okay, so we have an array. What's the most efficient way to find it and increase the number? And I wanted to just do like a simple for loop. Simple for loop. He wanted to do a find index, and we went to like JS performance, and we looked at all these benchmarks. The for loop was like 3 times faster, but he said this looks prettier, so I'm going to do find index. So we're just going to do look at that array, do a find index, and then item equals. So for each item in the array, we're going to get its ID, and we're going to compare it to the GIF ID. And that's going to give us the index of where that object is located in the array. And then we're just going to do data, pass in that index. And I believe votes, we're going to increase it by 1. And then we're just going to save that data. So we're doing request. I know this Webtask storage thing gets really old really quick, but it's better than the alternative. We're trying to hook up to a third-party database and hope everything still works. Arrow function. And then again, since we are excellent coders, we're just going to send Chris a success message saying that everything is A-OK. So with that said, now we have 2 additional endpoints for our API. One that's going to give us 2 GIFs to battle, and the ability to vote on a GIF and increase its count by 1. Do you guys have any questions so far?
Are you preparing for collisions at all?
So right here in this shuffle array, it's going to ensure that we don't get any collisions. So it should be good, fingers crossed.
So two people can't vote at the same time? That kind of collision.
Oh, they could, but they're not gonna. Right? All right, Chris.
Hold on, I want to take a show of hands. Okay, this data.findIndex one-liner in ES6 versus like a 90-line for loop.
It was like 6.
For a non-JS developer.
I got my answer. All right, let's go back. We are doing the verses. So we're just going to go get the battle, the versus GIFs, the 2 GIFs that he just created, and we're going to display them. We're going to add a vote button, and we're going to hit that vote endpoints to do all that good stuff. So since we already saw kind of the starter point for Vue, I think we can move a little bit faster now. We're going to need 2 functions. One is going to be get the versus GIFs. 2 is going to be, vote on a certain GIF. And let's hash these out right now. We're going to say get battle GIFs. And down here, we're going to say vote on GIF. And this one is going to require an ID since we didn't know what we're voting on. The battle GIFs, we're going to need to be a data point since we're going to grab new data. So we'll say battle GIFs is null. And down here, let's go ahead and fill this out. Axios.get this.api URL and the /verses, I believe it was, right? Yeah. So .then response this.battlegifs is equal to response.data. Cool. So we'll save that, and then all the way up here, and let's collapse our GIF creation section. And then we'll look at our voting app section. This is where battle GIFs go. Like in Angular.js, we can loop over things using v4. So we're going to say div class, and this is going to be a Bulma class, just to half things up, just half and half. We're going to say column, and it is half. Enter, and we're going to say GIF container, inside of that an image tag, on top of that caption. Yeah. And we'll say vbind. I need a colon there. Demo says no alt tags. And this will be v if battle GIFs exists. And this is also a v4, so we're going to loop over the 2 battle GIFs that we have. v4 GIF in battle GIFs. And then down here we'll say GIF.URL. Here we'll say GIF.image. Oh, no, sorry, caption. And that should be enough to show what's going on. So we have create a GIF here, fight. I always do that. We didn't actually use the method that we created. Get battle GIF. We did that earlier and we were staring at it for like 5 minutes, not understanding. But, where am I? Oh, okay, cool. So we have our 2 battle GIFs, and they're looped over, they're showing side by side, very good. All we need is our vote buttons that hooks up to the vote on GIF method that we just created. So here, we'll go back to our view side of things, GIF caption, and then underneath this GIF container, we're just gonna say a class is button and is warning, so we can turn it yellow. And I know we saw it earlier, we did v on. Click is equal to vote on GIF, and we need to pass in the ID, so we'll say GIF.ID and vote. Now the cool thing about Vue is that you have a couple syntactical sugar things to add on. You, instead of doing v on, you can just use the @ symbol, and instead of vbind, you can just use the colon. And I know some of you are thinking of like Angular 2 when they did the whole brackets and parentheses thing, and this, but both Angular 2 and this are valid HTML, which is interesting.
You have a typo.
GIF ID.
Yeah,
Ah, okay. All right. Just a couple letters over. One letter over. All right, so now we have that. This is our favorite one, the jamming. I think we did not even wire up vote yet. So we have our buttons, we have our HTML done, which is actually pretty short on HTML, which is great. Then we just need to wire up vote on GIF, Axios.post request to this.api URL /vote, and we're going to pass in the ID, ES6, easy way to create objects, then response this.get random battle, get battle gifs. So we're going to refresh the battle gifs, and then we're also, is that all we're doing?
For now.
For now. All right, so instead of doing a success message, thank you for your votes, giving you points or whatever, or showing points, we're just going to refresh and hope they knew what happened. Not good UI at all. So save that. We'll come over here and we'll vote on this right one. And that refreshed it, went over to a new one, and that's it for this second section. And Auto can show us the vote number counts incrementing. But yeah.
Yep. Sweet. So now our app's kind of coming together a little bit. We have the ability to create captions. We have the ability to vote on GIFs now. So, what's the point of voting if you can't have a winner? So the last thing we're going to add is a really quick and simple leaderboard. So I'm going to build the endpoint here, and I just have to stop here. It's going to be a GET request. Just going to hit the leaderboard endpoint, and it's going to return all of the GIFs in most GIF or most votes to least votes order. So the way that's going to look is once you hit this endpoint, we're going to go into the storage, get the storage, get the error and data, and then we're just going to sort this data now. Data.sort. So if this one is smaller than the other one, we're going to
One line. It's pretty.
do that, and then we're just going to respond with all of that data in JSON format. So really simple, really easy, and just to make sure that it works, we'll hit the leaderboard, and boom. So yeah, we have our favorite jamming GIF, which has the most votes, and then the newly created ones, they have 0 votes. And let's just make sure that this works. I'm going to go in here. I'll vote on this genie in a bottle. Refresh. Let's see how many it has.
0.
0. And now it has 1. So we're good. Our leaderboard works. Our vote functionality works. That's a little scary. Let's hand it over to Chris to implement the functionality so we can see the leaderboard.
All right, so let's start with our data section. This will be a lot faster than the other ones. Leaderboard is null. Cool. Down to our methods, we're going to do a get leaderboard. And just commenting in case, just kidding, I don't know. Get leaderboard is function axios.get. Sorry, yep, all the way top. Cool. All right, now all we have to do is loop it over. We already have most of the table built out. Down here, we'll collapse this middle one. So here we have rank, GIF, and votes. And we're going to loop through here with a TR. Let's do TR. Inside of that, we're going to have 3 TDs. And I think that's about it. Yep. So on top of that, we'll say v-if leaderboard. And the reason I'm doing these v-ifs, and I'll show you up here, is because when we start our Vue instance, it is null, so it doesn't exist. But here, it's going to try to go ahead and grab gif.caption, which doesn't exist on null, which will throw the error. So we have to do this v-if check just to be sure that we're not looking up anything inside of a null type. Where are we? v-if leaderboard, v4, and we'll say item. Oh, we'll do gif in leaderboard. And then this will be, oh, also, we want rank. So another thing you can do in Vue is you can say gif and split that out into having an index. We'll say index +1, since we don't want to start at 0. And here we're going to say gif container image inside of that, and then inside of that is a caption. So here we'll say bind gif.url, that is caption, gif.caption. Sorry, I haven't been on a Mac in a while. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I mean, it's not working.
You don't need the brackets.
Oh, I don't need the brackets, right. All right, hold on. Almost there. And last but not least is gif.votes. Save that, swing back over to our leaderboard. 3 for 3. Man.
And you might want to add it to the when you vote on a GIF.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll do that. Okay. Number 1, like you should be. Number 2, number 3, all the way down. So cool, very easy. And the last thing we want to do, this was kind of a small thing that we found, is when you vote, we want to make sure that the leaderboard gets updated. So we'll say this dot. And that is the bulk of our entire application before we get to authentication. So does anyone have any questions on Vue? Any questions on Vue? Any feedback? Yes.
I just have a question. So, what is what in your opinion be the main advantage over Angular? Because to me it seemed pretty similar. Is it just less bulky?
It is far less bulky, yes. As far as Angular 2 is concerned, Angular V2. But Angular V2 is more geared towards a full application, a full single-page application, right? It's not as easy to drop in Angular if you already have an existing application. The cool thing about Vue is you can say, okay, just target this one div right here. But Angular, it's just like, this is your entire application, this is it. Unless you do a little finagling.
So it doesn't have like a digest cycle and the whole...
Vue does?
Like it got it. So like your app, it can live outside, it can live like its own little hole, I suppose.
Correct, yes. It definitely can. Just like we did, one way that we were playing around with making this application is probably a better way to do it, is right now we have our app ID, which is encompassing everything, right? We also had our IDs for create, for votes, and for leaderboard, and we were thinking about doing a separate Vue instance for each of those. We didn't want to bring in any routing or anything like that, so yeah, it's more lightweight, and you can have it live in separate sections of your app if you already have maybe a server-side rendered app with Node or something like that. It really fits well if you just want to drop it in.
So it's a lower footprint.
Far lower footprint, yes. Yeah. I think, let's go look. Their footprint is 20 kilobytes minified, and last time I checked, Angular 2 was, I think, sitting around 400. Yeah. So, you know, it depends on what you want. If you're doing a full single-page application, I think Angular is great. But the cool thing with Vue is if you want to do a single-page application, you can bring in Webpack, you can bring in a whole bunch of different things and create something at the same scale as Angular. So that's why Vue is progressive, right? It goes from the lower tier to the higher tier. Right now? Okay.
Not all the questions, just going forward.
Okay. Okay. So I think that's it for the front end.
Yep. So the last thing we kind of wanted to show you guys before we close out is authentication on the app. So right now, we allow the user to come in here, create as many gifts as they want, and they can vote on as many gifts as we want. And as we saw, some of the gifts can be a little varying levels of inappropriateness. So we're going to require a user to be logged in and authenticated before they can create a GIF. We'll let anyone vote because we're a startup. We're trying to get a bunch of people using our app. But to create GIFs, you're going to have to sign up. And to do that in an easy way, we're going to do it with Auth0. And since we're an authentication company, we're going to try to do this in 5 minutes or less. So I already brought in the Auth0 JS SDK essentially, which is going to allow us to handle all of the authentication aspects. So rather than just sitting down here and writing all of them out, I'm just going to go through them really quickly. We're using the Auth0 JavaScript library and just passing in my, my particular credentials, my domain, my, public client ID, the type of token I'm expecting. I'm going to get an access token to talk to my API and an ID token for my user. So we're going to be doing API-based authentication to talk to our backend. And we're just going to have a couple of different methods here. We're going to have one called isAuthenticated, which is just going to check to make sure that the user is actually logged in. A logout method that's just going to destroy the user session on the front end. So we're going to destroy their token, their ID token, and the access token. And we're going to set their application state to logged in false. The set session is kind of a helper that's just going to set, once they log in, we're going to take their tokens and put them in local storage. Login is going to call the Auth0 authorize method, which is going to redirect the user to Auth0's hosted login page. And from there, they're going to log in with however they want. Then we're going to redirect them back with a callback to our application. We're going to get their tokens there. And then this handle authentication function is going to do all the magic for us. So this is really the simplest way to do it. Just a couple lines of code. And then to protect our backend, this is what the JWT and the JWKS libraries are for. The JWT library here, the Express JWT, allows us to work with JSON Web Tokens for our Node applications. So we can create new tokens, we can verify tokens, we can do all sorts of fun stuff with tokens. The JWKS library, the type of authentication we're going to be doing is RS-256, which is like a public-private key encryption. Auth0 has a private key that it's going to sign the token with. It gave me like a public key, and it's going to use that public key to verify that the token was generated by Auth0. So I'll show you the middleware I wrote here called JWT check, and it's basically just going to download my my public key out here, check and make sure that the token that Chris is going to send from the front end has the GIF battle audience, everything works well. We'll serve the request. If not, we're going to kick Chris out and tell him you can't access our API. And the last thing I'm going to do here is, so anybody can create GIFs right now. So where was that input? So right here, there's no protection on it. I'm not using that middleware. So I'm just going to add it here. And now this middleware is going to fire off before we even get to the GIF creation stage. So if that fails for whatever reason, he's going to get a 401 unauthorized and nothing's going to happen. And I can show you guys here. I'll just make an empty post request. I'll hit run. And I get an no authorization token was found, so I can't make this post request anymore. And neither can Chris until he logs in properly and gets the correct token. So we're going to hand it over to Chris to try and figure out this authentication.
Try is the right word. So you already saw that we brought in the Auth0 JavaScript library and the Auth0 SDK that automate. So what we're going to do is here, we're just going to create a login button. Let's just copy this one. And on a click, we're going to say use the login function that we are about to create. So let's go down to the methods. Let's go up here, yellows. We're going to create a login function. Login is going to be a function which uses, and since we try to make this as simple as possible, we just attach a bunch of things to the window. Auth service dot login. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so we have our two functions to do the login, logout, thanks to the Auth0 SDK. And the cool thing about our setup right now is we're not trying to create a whole login page. We're just going to use the hosted one that Auth0 already puts up for us. So we'll come up over here, and our login button is already there. So this should do its job. Wrong way, this way, all the way at the top. Login button. We'll click login. It will take us to the hosted page. We can log in with GitHub. You can set up a number of providers. How many providers?
Any OAuth2 compatible provider, and then we have over 50 of them built out of the box, like GitHub, Facebook, Twitter, all the major ones essentially. But if you do have an OAuth2 compatible application that you're building yourself, you can integrate it with our platform relatively easily.
So we're going to log in. And how do we know that we were logged in? We can look at our application local storage down here. And local storage, we'll refresh that. Oh, we didn't handle the authentication. So we got everything sent back to us. We didn't actually store it because we didn't call. That's a big problem with me tonight.
We didn't do authentication.
I didn't do what we were supposed to do, authentication. So on this login, yeah, that's right. So when the application is created, because when they get sent back to us, it's pretty much a page refresh, and our Vue instance gets recreated, instantiated, starts looking at things to hook into. So we're going to say window.authService.handle the authentication, and this happens if our URL comes back, and we can kind of see it here. You can see the access token up in the URL. If we had wired it together, it would have taken the access token, stored it in local storage down here, and we would have essentially been logged in. So we'll go over here. That will handle the access token, and we'll also do a Vue variable for ourselves so we can use it in the views. So isLoggedIn is equal to window.authService.isAuthenticated. And now, since we have a new variable isLoggedIn, we'll set that to false. All right. Everything's wired up now. Let's take a look. We'll log in again. That one was not safe for work. And you can see down here, we have our new access token hanging out, and our ID token, and our profile, which is all the information we got from GitHub itself. So user profile, all that good stuff. And I think we're getting close on time. So let's wrap this up. We need up here, where's our login button? We need a logout button. And we only want to show one of these. So the if not is logged in. And the same goes for here. Wrong place. I'll just stop trying to use shortcuts. Not is logged in. Sorry, this is like you trying to use Vim on a computer you don't know. Is logged in. All right, so if you save that, refresh, we see our logout button, and once I click logout, which I did accidentally really fast, it removed the access token from. So you see the access token is in local storage. As soon as you click logout, access token and all that good stuff is removed. Profile's still there, but
That profile is actually from a different
So the last thing that we have, which is a very simple Vue HTML thing, this create GIF button, it will return a 400 error since we're not authenticated currently. So we just want to make sure that button's not usable, clickable. If they're not logged in, we can just go back over, and this is right here. And we'll say, instead of this, we'll pretty much do the exact same thing. If is logged in, and we'll do if is logged in. And this is starting to get a little long of a line, but this will say login to create, and then over here beyond click we'll just say login. Cool? Cool, cool. So login to create, we'll go ahead and try to do something, click create, and it'll take us to login anyway. So that kind of wraps up everything. I think we can go interceptor, man. Okay, okay. So the last step is, even if we were logged in, like I'm about to log in, and we made that create a GIF request, the API would still call us unauthenticated because we didn't pass in the access token. So we have to go ahead and tell the Axios library, which is the thing that handles all of our HTTP calls. We're just going to say, hey, if you see an access token in local storage, just attach it to the request, and we'll be good. And this is something I do not know off the top of my head, so we're going to say Axios interceptors.use, and we're going to have two functions here. We'll have the config, which does one thing, and then the error also, which does the other thing. And the error, we won't use it. And down here in config, we'll say const access token is equal to local storage dot get item access token, and we will say if access token exists, config dot headers, and the way you attach a JWT to a request is through the bearer headers authorization header is equal to bearer space and the actual access token. Save that, and now if we come back over here to create something, there's errors. Uh-oh. I think I actually have to use error.
Missing a brace on the head.
You don't need it, but yes, we can throw it there. The if will get terminated by the first semicolon it sees. What's going on?
You've heard of the semicolon and terminate. Yeah.
Ha.
Semicolon, you got a mysterious semicolon.
Again? All right, check this out. Okay. We didn't return anything out of there. Okay. Where are we? So let's create something. And if we go to the network tab, XHR, we click create, we can see we hit the battle API, and success is true, which is great. And if we look at our headers, we can see all the way down in request headers, authorization bearer, and the access token we have. So we passed in the access token. Oh, we did a lot today, actually. So, yeah, to recap, our 3 sections, right? Create, battle, leaderboard. What do we get?
What's that say?
I can't. I don't know how to read that. None of these showed up when we were testing. But that's how it works, I guess. All right, so, yeah, 3 big sections, 3 big parts. Made pretty easily, I would say, using serverless Node backend and a Vue frontend. So let's go. Do we still have slides?
Yeah, just the things. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so that's all we have for you guys. Yeah, we can take maybe 7-8 minutes worth of questions. We're actually flying out at 10 p.m., so we're happy to take a couple questions though.
So if you have a Node.js app that's on a server, you can just easily move it into the serverless?
Yeah, so the question was, if you have an existing Node.js app, can you move it to Webtask? You can. So really, I can show you the code here. What you can do is you can actually just compile your app on your local machine and just use the Webtask CLI to push your application to Webtask. So we just used the online editor just because it was easier, but you could write all your code locally and then just push it to Webtask.
Questions? Anyone else? What did you all think of Vue? Yeah? Those that have worked with Angular 2, what did you think of Vue's syntax?
Reminds me of Angular 1.
Yeah, it's very similar.
What's interesting to me is that I think, so this is the easiest way to use Vue, right? This is on the lower end, this is closer to React. You can actually create a .vue file, which what it does is you actually say templates, and you give it a source, and then you give it some, Vim on this computer is just different. You give it style, and then you give it script, and then this is where you create your script tag. So now you have a single file, I guess, component in Vue. So this is kind of the medium level of using Vue. And then if you take it a step further, there's actually a Vue syntax that is pretty much Angular 2 syntax. It uses decorators, it uses TypeScript, it uses the whole shebang. So
Vue can also parse JSX, of course.
yes.
And Vue, I don't know if you've used it, but Vue CLI generator gives you an amazing kind of UX if you like everything built out and all your testing frames and all that kind of stuff for you.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point. The Vue CLI, really great tool. There's a number of different templates it has available. It can do a full Webpack install. It can do something similar to what we created. It can do this Vue.vue file install. So really good stuff.
Yeah, so we have one question from the stream, which is, what distinct advantage does Webtask offer over Lambda?
So when comparing Webtask to Lambda, I think our biggest advantage is ease of use. So if you were to deploy an AWS Lambda application, you have to deploy the AWS Lambda app first. You have to use the API gateway to set it up. And the Amazon AWS ecosystem, it's great once you get it all working, but figuring out how to get it all to work properly is sometimes more of a pain than it's worth. But with Webtask, I mean, if you download the CLI, all you really have to do is so once you download the CLI, you just do like wt init, give them your email or your password. I'm not going to overwrite that, but you basically just put in like your email address. Will send you a code, and then you do wt edit to launch the editor and write your code, and your code's live right away. So that's one of the advantages of Webtask over Lambda.
Do you have logs somewhere?
Yeah, so you can see all of your logs actually in here. So if I go to this battle here, you can see all of the logs. So anything I do, let's just say I call random, for example. It'll be logged out here. So if I were to do any like console logs, I would see them here. Any error messages, I could see them here. And you also have a GitHub integration. So we coded everything kind of ad hoc here, but you could actually deploy your Webtask code to GitHub, use the GitHub integration, and then as soon as you push code, it'll be deployed to the Webtask, and you'll be always up and running. And then you can use any NPM module. We have a bunch of different templates to get you started right away with Express with MongoDB, empty functions. If you need full HTTP control, we have an example for that. So, I mean, it's a really flexible platform to go out, and it's totally free to download and play with and try. The only limitation we have on it right now is it's limited to each Webtask function is limited, has a soft limit of 1 request a second, but you guys try it out. If you do like it, you can contact us and we can work with you. And then we do have another product that's built on Webtask called Auth0 Extend. And what this does is it allows you to add this functionality to your SaaS application. So if you're building a SaaS app and you want to give your customers the ability to add basically like webhooks, but instead of having them, write the webhooks, host them somewhere, they could do it all in the editor, with our Extend editor in your application and just kind of get that functionality right off the bat.
Any other questions?
One quick Vue question.
Sure.
So let's just assume those 3 different parts of the app were Vue components, and you were going to lay them out. Like, the only trouble I have with Vue, which I do love, but especially if time and shape is really, really fast compared to Angular.
Yeah.
But I get trouble aligning things when I get it into a grid system. And I can't use Golem because it's not really for IE compatible. Force down. How do you go about that? Do you put a container on a root app and then scope CSS inside your components or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our current setup, it's like global styles. But when you actually get into Vue components themselves, because right now we just created a Vue instance and just applied it to everything, there are ways you can compartmentalize with Vue components. And yes, you can scope styles. When you create the style tag, you just add the scoped attribute to it, and it kind of knows exactly what component.
Like, do you have just one root container somewhere then?
You can. Yes. Are you asking about like if you have nested components inside of a root container? Yeah. So there's ways that you can scope it so that it applies to only its children. There's ways to scope it where it applies only to itself. I hope that.
Yeah, that's just for me the part that's not simple.
Oh, scoping styles?
Well, just not just scoping them, but getting nested components to work in grid systems.
Okay. That's interesting. But I think it matters how you create your HTML, right? I think that's more of a stylistic, like a CSS issue.
Yeah.
But I think a good framework always helps if what you're saying is not an option. So, I don't know. Good luck.
And thank you guys again. And if you do have any other questions, you need to follow us on Twitter, reach out. We'll be happy to help.
These guys, Milano and Chris are up in California, specifically for this meetup, right?
Vegas.
Oh, right. Oh, you guys are from Vegas? I didn't know that. Okay, so they're from Vegas. Let's do that again. So they're from Vegas. They're flying back. So let's give them a round. Do you have one more announcement from Andy?
Yeah, sure. So I'm part of the I'm part of the FullStack Meetup with Mike. Frontend Masters is a website that offers training and courses on all things front end. I can give away a bunch of 1-year prepaid subscriptions to that. So especially if you're a code school student or junior developer just getting started in the industry, come see me after, and I'll give you a code. I think their newest course is a 5-hour course on Vue from Sarah Drasner, who's amazing. So yeah, if you're interested in Vue, come talk.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
so much, guys.
Thanks again for coming out. Co-organizer Austin here. He's going out to Black Shirt, right?
Black Shirt Brewery.
Black Shirt Brewery. So if you want to come out network, come hang out. He's crazy, so be careful. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks again. Oh, yeah. That was awesome. Yeah.
I wish we could stay longer and chit chat.
There was that like Mongo on the
Yeah, so we just like But I think you get that.
Yeah, yeah.